now just require an API for their mobile applications or whatever they wanted, whatever their purpose is. So I'm not saying that web development is dead, but certainly these developing APIs is also on the rise. And so far, I've been through different phases on developing APIs. So part one, I tried to develop an API using Rails. So the thing with Rails is that it does so many things and it's very good at it. But I think for API purposes, Rails is kind of overkill. So we don't need the views and things like that for APIs. We just want to supply them with, I don't know, JSON or XML if you're kind of old. And so basically there's too many things that are not used when you use Rails as your framework for APIs. And also, obviously, that also includes some overhead that you incur when developing with it. So lots of things doesn't get used, so it's kind of waste of resources. And we want our APIs to be very fast. And so, but it was very easy to develop APIs with Rails. That's from personal experience. So when I came across this mindset that I want to just optimize my APIs, I tried different things. So the next framework that I tried for developing an API is Sinatra. Now Sinatra is very minimal. Now it's so minimal that if you're used at developing Rails, you would sometimes feel that it's very lacking in features, while it's not. But the truth is, you just have to be more involved in developing different features that you want. So with Sinatra, you have to build your own. It's like you have to do your own framework for handling these things, like your database, your ORM, and if you want authentication, things like that. So there are fewer. There are more things that you have to do when you try to develop with Sinatra, and most of the time, the cost of development, if you're not familiar with it, will just go up since you're trying to build things on your own most of the time. But the resulting API will be very streamlined and it's very specific for whatever your needs are. And the next thing that I tried while developing APIs, this is somewhat a derivative of Sinatra. It's called Padrino. It's in the back end, it uses Sinatra, but it has a more Rails-like structure. So it's good in the same way that it also has some of the features that Rails provides. So it actually has a dependency on active support, which is one of Rails' also dependency, and provides us with views and helpers, link routes, link helpers like link to and things like that. So basically, it's a bit easier than Sinatra, but still you might be missing some features from Rails if you came from Rails. Now, also one part of developing APIs is that you also obviously you have to have a database to store your data. Now this is basically dependent on your project, on your application. So what you want usually is something that makes everybody happy. Now I also, this is again a personal experience of mine, I tried to use Redis before and an API since I want my API to be fast. Now what happened is that although my APIs are very fast, it was very, very, very hard to code and maintain my own code because Redis is something that I'm not familiar with. So I've gotten some benefits out of it, obviously, the speed, and it's just it's things that you wouldn't do with MySQL, like iterating over every record. You could do with Redis if you want, but you shouldn't. And the drawback is that if you are working on a team and you yourself is not an expert on, let's say, this on your chosen database, your teammates would obviously also have a hard time coding, and obviously that results to some bugs, maintainability problems, and things like that. So what happened is that after all these lessons, I mean, I could have tried other things like Mongo and things like that, but for this latest project that I'm doing, an API, I tried to make a mindset that I should go with whatever's somewhat known by everybody. So it's basically a choice. So for database, I simply chose Postgres. So everybody knows Postgres or MySQL, and also I also use Rails, but it's just sort of there to it's just present for comforting other developers, because I actually use another framework which I mounted into Rails, and I use Drake for the API component. So on frameworks for APIs, there's various options you have out there. I think there's a Rails with a stripped down version of Rails without active support, I think. So Rails API, I think, is the gem. So it's specifically created, I think, just for making APIs. And then there's Great, and also I think there's also Rabble that is also for Rails, but it's just for presentation. So it's like a view handler for your Rails to make JSON, to just create JSON data. But the thing with Great is it's another rack application, so you can mount it into other rack applications, right? Like Rails, which I did. So it's actually the Rails part of the code doesn't have anything. All the code is done on the Great side of things, and my database is Postgres. So I think it's sort of a win-win situation for the whole team, because basically everybody knows the technology that is being used, and they are all familiar with it. And even though Great may not be a familiar library for everyone, it's still easy to use, and although it's also under heavy development now, so most of its features are still need some work. So basically, that's it. And one of the things that I've learned about this is that just try to look for the best tool that you out there. So you might make mistakes in choosing your tools, but you just have to fix it. I mean, it's software. It's meant to be changed. It's soft. So with that thinking, you could simply just, I made a mistake. I just have to be responsible enough and fix it. So on the current project that I'm working on, this API, I think we test and all that. So I've come up with a good formula that everybody could use. So I would like to have a nice presentation about that, but unfortunately, I'm a surprise speaker with a surprise topic. And basically, one of the key things that obviously for APIs, if it's a mobile application, you might think concurrent requests and things like that. So I've also added a bit of sugar to this API development that I did. One of the, I think the direction towards which the Ruby community is going now is they want asynchronous applications. So I've added some asynchronous elements to this project. So basically, when in Rails, I tested just a simple, let's say I put in 100 records with just a simple column, let's say name with a string. And I tried to make concurrent requests to it, and I think it failed miserably. So my benchmarks gave me something less than 10 requests per second, while leveraging on asynchronous libraries actually gave me about close to 100 requests per second. So how I did it is I used Synchrony, event machine Synchrony, and I gathered libraries that are compatible with it. For example, I use Active Record for my Postgres, for my database. And for Postgres, you have to also have an asynchronous driver I think it was PostgreSQL, EM PostgreSQL, that's the driver, database driver. And Active Record, I've added EM, I don't know, it's EM Synchrony, the library for making asynchronous calls, has a library extension for Active Record, and you can use it readily. So if you look at that angle, I've also considered the libraries that I am going to use. So at the very first day of the project, I wanted my application to be asynchronous, my API to be asynchronous. So I could have chosen Mongo or Redis, but I might have difficulty in also making that also those database asynchronous. So at that time, I was thinking the simplest and easiest way to get high output from my API calls. And so far, it's been doing fine. So with that, I just mounted Grape on a Rails application, slapped in some asynchronous magic, and so far the API is doing. I think the calls are fast, and I think I got a good formula for days to come unless I find another library to change it. So I mean, that's it. Basically, that's my talk, and basically it's about, and also APIs are not just for mobile applications. So I think also there's a movement towards making the front end intelligent and just calling APIs from API calls. We have backbone for that, but that's a whole new topic to discuss. So it won't hurt. So just try building your APIs, make it very fast, and use it. Use it for your mobile applications. Use it for your web applications that have intelligent front ends. And that's it. That's my talk. Any questions?
A couple of questions. The APIs that you were talking about and the products that you have been working on, are they new or they old?
Sorry.
Are they new products? Are you building it from scratch, or they are like existing code base that you're building on?
Okay. So this latest project I'm working on, they actually have already a built, they already have a backend and an API, but they just want to add to it. So it's the same. It's both an old project, but they need a new backend API to supply their application, and that's what I built. So you could technically look at it as from scratch because I basically built it from scratch.
So you're saying that your existing app is a whole different code base from your API app?
Actually, the app itself, I don't have to. The app itself is a mobile application. So all I have to do is build something that throws out JSON at it, the data that it needs. So yeah, I built this API.
So the existing app is different from the API app?
Yeah, it is different.
It is different.
Yeah.
The second question is how do you work with your
Grape actually has various. It might differ from the libraries, but the one I'm using is Grape. You could version it via the URL or via the headers. So,
okay, so you pass URL information either in the URL or you pass info either in the request headers.
Yeah,
right? So how do you handle it in the code?
I'm not sure
So
about.
if you are providing two different behaviors for two different versions, how do you handle that?
Actually, I'm at the point now where it's still just version 1, but obviously, for example, this is just something I'm gonna make up on the fly. For example, the mobile developer wants a whole another set of APIs. It's gonna be called V2. I think it's gonna be easy since, for example, I would use URL to version my API. Then the existing code would obviously have V1 API, and then for the next versions of the API, they could simply either change the code before it, or if it doesn't have to be changed, it could stay there. Since as long as let's say on my end, my back end, the API is still support V1, then they don't have to change it.
Right. Okay. Here's a third question. You built the API after you, right?
Yeah.
And then you were saying that you put it asynchronous stuff, right? Why did you build it in Ruby? Why did you open Node?
Well, basically, I'm a Ruby developer, and
That answer. I got the answer. So Ruby meetup, yes, you will go for Ruby.
questions. All right.
Great job.
Hindi, mag-day ba kayo?